if you teach pre-A1 students, then you know how it feels when your students still answer in one-word replies after months of lessons. It isn't that you're failing, but it does feel like something important is missing. Most beginners are not stuck because they don't understand. They're stuck because we haven't trained sentence production as a habit. So today, I'm going to show you why pre-A1 plateaus happen, why rotating materials can slow progress, and why once-a-week lessons often equal maintenance, and exactly how to condition students to speak in full sentences creatively and confidently with concrete strategies and tips that you can use in your next lesson. If you've ever thought, why isn't she progressing? This session will change how you see beginner growth. Hi, I'm Megan from Florentis Learning. I've been teaching online since 2017, and I have about 20 years of teaching experience. I've taught in Canadian classrooms. I have a Master's of Education and Curriculum Studies, and I've been developing curriculum for approximately 20 years. I'm the founder of Florentis Learning. Let's really dive in. The whole thought around, my student's stuck. I feel like I'm alone. You're not alone. But before we dive into the solutions, let's take a collective breath and normalize what you're experiencing. Pre-A1 students are navigating an incredibly complex cognitive process, and what looks like stagnation is often silent progress happening beneath the surface. So one of the things is that we have this difference between receptive versus productive skills. They understand far more than they're ready to say or speak, and their comprehension is developing ahead of their speaking ability. They give you one-word answers because this just feels safer. They require less cognitive load, there's less chance of mistake. They're really comfortable with that. They also may be dependent on you providing prompts because they haven't yet developed the confidence or that automaticity to produce their language independently. They also might be giving you one-word answers because they really just don't want to make mistakes and they have a fear of making errors. So they need that encouragement to take consistent risks, to give them that structured support so that they feel comfortable taking those risks. And that happens through structured repetition. So if you feel like your student is plateauing, it doesn't mean failure. It just means that the student is consolidating functional skills that all support future learning. So here's that fundamental shift in perspective that really changes everything. Pre-A1 is not about learning new grammar constantly. It's not about endless vocabulary lists or moving through units at a prescribed pace. Think of it really more as physical training. So if we think about building strong muscles, and really our brain is a muscle as well, you get stronger by conditioning those muscles through repeated, structured exercise. And the same thing happens with sentence production. With our pre-A1 students, we really want to build three critical capacities from the start. So we want them to be able to generate complete sentences without translating from their native language first. We want them to have the confidence and the familiarity with these sentence structures so that they can expand them flexibly. And we want to have enough repetition so that this is internalized and it just becomes this unconscious response. They don't need to think about how to put that sentence together. Now, understanding sort of why students plateau, and there's many, many reasons. It might be that they're only having one English class a week. And I have lots of students whose parents are like, no, just one English class. That's all we can fit into our schedule right now. I've also taught some of those same students up to 4 times a week. And so I can see in my own teaching the difference between that once a week student and that 4 times a week student. My once a week student is doing great, right? But they're maintaining their level. We're not seeing big gains, we're not seeing big improvements. They sometimes forget between lessons, and especially if you've got a holiday in there or cancellation or a sick day, then all of a sudden you've got 2 weeks between lessons and you spend a lot of time in your lesson helping students reactivate instead of advancing. When we rotate between too many materials, jumping between core lessons, speaking activities, games, vocabulary games, supplementary materials, then this really prevents that deep repetition needed for internalization. That doesn't mean that we can't use a combination of materials. We absolutely can. We just want to make sure that we think about how we do it in a very planned way. And we want to make sure that we think about how we do it, especially if we only have that student once a week. We also sometimes, as teachers, just get complacent. Sometimes we decide, you know what, it's okay. I'm going to accept this one word answer from my student. And so then they're like, oh, okay, the teacher let me do it today. So I guess that means I can do one word answers more often. And the teacher's okay with that. And the reality is that if they ask me, no, 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 I'm not okay with that. But sometimes we sort of forget that this is happening, right? It's just like, oh yeah, or maybe you just feel like you're tired of correcting them and tired of trying to fix this. And so it is something that we want to really be careful of. The Even though they might give one word answers every time and you might feel like a broken record, we want to continue to prompt them to give us full sentences. That path of least resistance will become permanent default. Variety is engaging, but we also want to recycle the same sentence patterns. And that's why you see things like, what do you see? I see a horse. What do you see? I see a cow. What do you see? So you see these consistent sentences throughout some of the pre-A1 stuff. And we see the consistent questions that are happening in a unit. What are you wearing? What is he wearing? What is she wearing? So that we can continue to help them develop that same sentence over and over again. And without sort of these predictable routines that require students to give us a sentence, they don't build that muscle memory that leads to that automatic lesson use. So if you are guilty of any of these things or know, oh yeah, that is the student to a T, then drop a note in the comments and know that you're not alone. We all have students like this, and this is really, really common. So let's look sort of at numbers. Let's do the math. I've taught math before. I love mathematics. Math is sort of something that you'll see me with all the time. But 4 lessons a month, which is a standard once a week schedule. If we double that, then we double the contact time, which then is obviously going to accelerate progress, right? Meeting once a week means your student gets, either 2 hours or at most 4 hours, assuming, you have 25-minute or 50-minute lessons of exposure. And if they are doing something at home, awesome, right? Then that does help to increase it, but they're not all doing that extra practice and review. Meeting twice a week just doubles that, right? So the benefits go beyond that simple math. It means we've got shorter gaps between lessons, which means less forgetting, less time spent reviewing, more building fresh learning. And if we're in that once a week mode, then typically we spend the first 10 minutes or 15 minutes of each lesson reactivating what's partially forgotten and reiterating those sentence structures. Twice a week accelerates that progress and keeps learning warm. The connections stay active, the momentum builds naturally. We're building those stronger muscles. Think about the same thing if you were deciding you were going to go out for a run. You only do it once a week. Every time you do that run, it's going to be hard. Now, this pattern, this is sort of a cool thing. This comes down to sort of that rotation, right? So we often do it because, oh, there's a holiday, so this is cool. And I offer holiday lessons through Florentis Learning, and they're awesome and they're lots of fun. And maybe we want to focus on grammar on Monday and then speaking on Wednesday. And then we want to do some more games with them on Friday because it's Friday, and then back to the core content. The variety seems like it's engaging, but at a pre-A1 level, this really has a hidden cost. Each time you switch to a new activity type, they lose the thread of their sentence patterns that they were beginning to internalize. So before you start doing too much switching, make sure that we've gotten those patterns down automatically. Now, we do have beginner speaking lessons, and they do complement a lot of the core lessons. And so, you know, But switching back and forth between two unrelated topics or those types of things isn't necessarily the goal. So if you are incorporating speaking only lessons into your schedule, try and choose the lessons that align with the lesson topic and that have the same sort of sentence patterns in them so that you're continuing to practice that sentence conditioning. So we want to condition sentences. So, on one side, what is this? Dog. Good. No, let's move to what do you see? And the student says dog. And I say, full sentence, please. I see a dog. Awesome, great job. High five, give them a star, do whatever it is. The Florentis learning lessons have lots of built-in rewards. You can click the little button and give them the burst of confetti on the screen, or you can give them one of your stars or medals or whatever it is. It's the same interaction, right? It's a completely different outcome. You're training the student's brain to default to complete sentences. It does require patience, it does require consistency, but the results are transformative. And really, within a few weeks, students will begin saying, I see a, right? Every single time. So there should be no exceptions. We're going to try and move them from that word stage to prompted sentence and then to that expanded sentence stage. So I see a dog. I see a brown dog, right? And I remember very clearly when this happened with one of my students. Um, and we were in the clothing unit in level one. And I would say, oh, what is she wearing? She's wearing a shirt. What color is it? It's red. And I would say, I see, she's wearing a red shirt. And about lesson 4 or 5 in that unit, she started saying, I would say, what is she wearing? She's wearing a red shirt. And I would get the color connected with the clothing. And I didn't have to prompt the student anymore on that addition. So we were into that expanded sentence. This timeline varies greatly by student. Some move through these stages in weeks, others need months. And your job isn't to accelerate it artificially, but to provide that consistent, structured practice at each stage until they demonstrate their readiness to advance. Unfortunately, we can't skip steps. It's just we need to build that foundation, or else they aren't going to be able to remember that. It's building that muscle memory. So when you're looking at a unit, and all of the units in Florentis are set up this way, what you will find is that there are going to be 2, maybe 3 in the level 1, 2 lessons, key sentences, and you're going to see these over and over again. And what is she doing? What is she wearing? What color is it? What does it live on the farm? Yes, it does. Um, and the sentence frames really are a backbone of pre-A1 sentence conditioning. They're like training wheels that allow students to focus on meaning and vocabulary while the structure stays predictable and secure. Once you've selected your frames, commit to them, right? What do you see? Do you like it? And if they're a little bit further beyond, why do you like it? I like blue because I have a blue shirt, whatever. That is definitely more almost A1 level. So when you're getting them to give you reasons, we're certainly beyond that pre-A1. What is she doing, right? You know, you can get into questions where we are then ultimately, again, more advanced, but describing adjectives. It is blue and big. It is small and red. So once you've sort of identified for your student what you're going to focus on in that particular lesson, then, and in that particular unit, and the lessons will help guide you with that, then you can remember, you can keep drilling that. So how do we drill this without being boring? We can swap nouns. So we keep the same frame, but we change the subject. I see a dog. I see a cat. I see a bird. I see a tree. They are expanding vocabulary, but practicing the structure. Then we layer in the adjectives. I see a brown dog. I see a big brown dog, with really gradual increase in complexity. We can incorporate TPR. So what is she doing? She is running, and we're running there with them. This will also help with creating our muscle memory alongside that linguistic memory. As your students are getting a little bit more interested in writing, they can write a sentence on the whiteboard or on the screen. And this can help also provide that immediate feedback to the student. And for someone who really needs to see it, you writing it, them writing it, both of those things can help. You can use drawing. You can have students draw quick pictures and then, oh, what did you draw? I drew. You can, whichever. If it's a pre-A1, I'm not getting into drew. Um, it's a dog, it's a cat, it's a sun. And this is something that, especially if you've got little ones that like to wiggle a lot, maybe they enjoy drawing, get them to draw something on the screen. It's an apple, it's a banana. And you can practice then changing subjects. She is wearing a shirt. He is wearing a shirt. I am wearing a shirt. So, strategy number two is the general full sentence rule. And we all do this. And it's something that we just do. Sometimes we don't do it consistently, but we want to be consistent because we're trying to like rewire these output habits. Your student's brain has learned one word answers don't complete the interaction, only full sentences do. And if you consistently correct them, they'll start to self-correct. This is the moment that you know that the conditioning's working. The habit is transferring from external requirement to internal standard. And we want to stay consistent across all activities. We want to be supportive, not punitive. When they do it, you're going to be like, awesome. We can model the full sentence with, if needed, something like, perfect. Yes, it is blue. And we want to celebrate, right? Celebrate enthusiastically. We want to pay attention to that sort of signal where the students want to start writing. This is a breakthrough clue. They are ready. It's one of the most reliable indicators that your student is ready to expand their sentence production. And if they want to write about their week or their weekend or something happened to them, then they're demonstrating more confidence. So check, teacher, you've done an awesome job. You've got a student who's feeling confident and secure. They really want to express themselves in their second language. That internal motivation is gold. And they're willing to take risks because they're willing to write. They're ready to take the risks necessary to also expand on the sentences. When you spot it, don't just acknowledge it, capitalize on it. This is their natural desire to communicate. It's a perfect foundation for structured weekly sentence routines. And this is going to accelerate their progress dramatically. So you can do this through a weekly story. This routine, when you do it, is transformative if you do it consistently. It's the same predictable prompt. What happened this week? What is the weather? How do you feel? We do use those at the beginning of class, and our students get really good at them. So, set up the routine. What happened this week, right? They give you 2 or 3 sentences. No one-word answers, no incomplete thoughts. And then maybe in the first few weeks, you provide that model, right? And you say what you did that week. And then you celebrate. Celebrate every single sentence enthusiastically and track the improvement over time. If they are actually writing, just take a quick picture and save those pictures because if you save them with the date, you can scroll back through and see their progress so that when you're feeling frustrated or when their parent is feeling frustrated, you have proof. They are progressing and they're progressing well. You can then take those sentences that they write after they're comfortable with the basic ones, and you can ask some strategic questions. Things like, when did you go to the park? Who did you go to the park with? And you can continue to expand and build those sentences and help them stretch their sentences out longer. This is really that expansion, that structured sentence growth. You're teaching the students that sentences aren't fixed, they're flexible structures that accommodate more information. But we only want to add one element at a time. Make sure they're comfortable with that, they consistently do it, and then you can consider adding another one. And your students will begin to then ultimately do this themselves. They'll ask themselves questions and add detail independently. And that's when you know you've moved from very scaffolded practice to that independent production. So here's a sentence building game, and you'll find this in some of the lessons too, where you've sort of got three cards or three wheels that are random, and you get a pronoun, and then you get a verb, and then you get a noun. So something like I play soccer, right? An object. I play soccer. I eat apples. And the students can practice this out loud. In one of the transportation lessons, there's a monkey that climbs up a tree, and there's a bunch of sentence cards. And literally, it's like, how do you get it's the answer to how do you get to school? Go on foot, right? Or I get to school on foot. Or and then there's cards, and you drag the card away. I go by car. I go by bus. I go by taxi. And so they're practicing the vocabulary that they've learned in the unit, but they're practicing that sentence over and over and over again. Another option is draw and describe. So students love drawing their own things. So in one case, we might have a picture on the screen, and you can ask, what is she doing? What do you see? And there's lots of images in every single lesson that you can do this with. You may also want to just pull up a whiteboard and let them draw something. Simple scene, an action, an object. And then they have to talk about their drawing in three full sentences. Depending on their level, you can write those sentences for them, but three full sentences. And talking about a drawing or talking about a picture really does reduce the pressure. And if you are teaching a small group class, this is a great opportunity to have students talk about each other's drawings, which is sort of that collaborative piece, and it's fun. Establish sort of that rule of, three sentences minimum, right? So what did you eat? I ate pasta. I drank milk. I ate cake for dessert. So they have to provide one, and if you have the three questions from the unit, you have three questions, three sentences. What did you do? I went to my friend's house. What did you eat? We ate pasta. Who did you play with? I played with my friend, or we played video games, or whatever it is. And as the student becomes comfortable with this routine, you can add a fourth sentence. You can encourage the students to use those questions and ask you. So by asking you, you're modeling the sentences for them, and they're practicing the questions, which is great. This could just be like an interview journal where the students have written it, and then they come to class and they show you your journal, sort of whatever it is you want. But this is a great way to start off class. So unfortunately, the hard truth is that it's creativity is not going to fix the plateau. It's consistency. And it's not glamorous, but it is effective. Consistent application of the same foundational sentence frames across multiple contexts. So now we're talking about farm animals. Now we're talking about food. Now we're talking about zoo animals. This helps to build that pattern and that repetition until it just becomes unconscious. It just happens. They speak in sentences, and they'll internalize the grammar. They will begin to have sort of that natural rhythm for English, and they're going to become more confident, and you're going to see changes. So going back to what we sort of started with at the beginning, and sort of the concern around, oh, my student has been in level 2 for so long. They've been in pre-A1 for so long. This is not failure, right? It can take 200 hours to move from, pre-A1 to A1, from 150 to 200 probably. And it will depend, because sometimes they have classes in school, sometimes they have a bit of a base, but we're not talking about something that is super fast. And we don't rush the foundation work. If we're building a house, we're not going to just stack up the rocks and forget the cement. We don't cut corners. We want to make sure every element is solid, level, and secure, because everything else is sitting on top of that. These basic sentence structures that the students develop in pre-A1, they can expand on and make them more complex as they advance. They become comfortable processing and listening to English. They will be able to produce those complete sentences instead of single words, and they'll develop the confidence to take risks. So 3 months is normal, 6 months is perfectly acceptable. What matters is not how quickly students move through the levels, but how they master each stage. And these stages should not be rushed. Keep in mind, that number of classes per week as well, right? And how much time you're actually spending reviewing, reiterating, reteaching things that they've forgotten in that time frame. Helping students use full sentence, model full sentences, try sentence starters, use visual supports, pictures and drawings, and then encourage expansion. If you need some help with materials that are based on this, we've got sentences chosen for them. You are scaffolded and they are interactive and engaging and fun. Then grab our free sample pack from Florentis Learning. You will get 12 lessons from the core curriculum. You'll get beginner and intermediate writing lessons, beginner and intermediate grammar lessons, 5 speaking lessons, and a phonics lesson. And and really sign up today and check it out. If you have questions, if you have ideas, if you have questions about completely different things that you'd like to see a video on, then please drop a note in the comments. Uh, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Again, I'm Megan from Florentis Learning. Grab our free sample pack at florentislearning.ca. The link is in the comments.